SSX's story doesn't start on the PlayStation 2. It begins way back. It's 1991, and this is Whistler Blackcomb, the largest ski resort in North America. Steven and his friend Greg Stump
My name's Greg Stump.
are producing a show for Fox TV, titled Greg Stump's World of Extremes. The two are good friends, as well as professional skiers and avid snowboarders. They had just finished shooting the 7th segment of an 8th segment show, but they were out of ideas. When suddenly, Steven recalled an idea he's always had in the back of his mind. He told Greg about combining snowboarding with an obstacle course, complete with turns, jumps, and steep drops. Participants would race through this course alongside each other, competing for first place, with the occasional physical contact with the other snowboarders. It was fast, a little dangerous, and sounded like a whole lot of fun. Greg and crew loved the idea, and quickly began work on a makeshift course. After 24 hours and a lot of time behind a snowcat, the gang had a fully functional track. John Graham, Stump's business manager, reportedly spat out the name Bordercross, and a new sport was born. Greg's show, of course, was a hit, even being re-aired on MTV Sports. People around the world began creating their own Bordercross events. Bordercross's popularity grew, as did Steven's planning of the sport. He would routinely travel to different countries in order to help oversee and produce events. In 1997, Bordercross made its X Games debut. Its popularity continued to skyrocket. By this time, Steven had taken his expertise to Electronic Arts. EA was opening a new development team in Vancouver, Canada, and Steven's wife wanted to move back to her hometown. So, Steven landed a position as producer at EA Canada. His past experience in filmography was particularly useful during the production of FIFA 97 and Triple Play 98. As video games began moving more into the 3D space, they required a lot of consideration for camera behavior and positioning. As Steven moved up the ranks, he earned what he calls a silver bullet. What is a silver bullet? Well, it's a concept in which EA management would help you build on an idea you had for a game. And Steven, well, he had just the idea in mind. It would be a fusion of his sport, Bordercross, taking advantage of new 3D technology, with a heavy emphasis on fun over realism. SSX began development likely sometime in 1998 or 1999. Originally planned as a Sega Dreamcast title, there were disagreements between EA and Sega at the time, which shifted SSX to the upcoming Sony PlayStation 2. This worked out perfectly for Steven and his team, as he felt the game would perform better on a more powerful console. An early build of the game was shown to Sony executives, who were so impressed they offered to assist the development of SSX, in exchange that it be a launch title for the new console. EA was excited about the game's progress, but felt it didn't really fit in as a conventional sports title, given its arcade gameplay. Steven, being a man full of ideas, coined EA Big.
EA Sports. Big.
The marketing arm of Electronic Arts that would focus exclusively on arcade-style sports games, of which SSX would be the first. SSX was released alongside the PlayStation 2 in North America on October 26, 2000. The reviews were 9s and 10s across the board, including dozens of awards for Game of the Year, Best Sound, Best Graphics, Best Sports Game, Best PlayStation 2 Game, and was runner-up for Best Multiplayer Game, losing out to Time Splitters, which is fair.
Backside 360.
It features 8 playable characters, 4 of which had to be unlocked. All the characters have different stats that are broken down into 4 categories: edging, speed, stability, and tricks. Edging is how well you can turn. Speed, of course, is how fast you go. Stability is how easily you fall over, and last, tricks, is how quickly the animation plays while performing a trick. The higher the stat, the more tricks you can pull off per jump. Every character also has multiple outfits, which are simply cosmetic, and multiple boards, which further alter your stats. As you progress through the world circuit, that's the game's campaign mode, you'll earn skill points, which you can use to further enhance your character. Today, it's a fairly simple system, but it does reward you with a constant drip feed of new content, while also having a character who slowly grows over time the same time as you become a better player. Within the world circuit, you can choose between races or show-off mode. The former is pretty self-explanatory. They task you with racing to the finish line against 5 other boarders. This mimics the real-life sport of bordercross, which also has multiple racers on the same course at once. The show-off mode has you attempting to score as many points as possible via tricks before reaching the end of the course, though there aren't other boarders with you during a run. Finish in 3rd place or better and you'll earn a few points and unlock the next track. Left stick to move your board left and right, X to jump, and you can hold X to pre-jump, giving you more air.
Hey, you feel like doing a little spinning? You're holding down the spin control. When you release your jump button, you'll spin like a top.
SSX places a huge emphasis on its complex trick system. While approaching a jump, in addition to holding X to preload your jump, you can also pre-spin or flip, which requires you holding down the D-pad in the position you want to spin or flip. This is far faster than doing it yourself after jumping, and it's mandatory to learn if you want to progress. It's a fantastic mechanic that keeps you constantly engaged with the game. There's not a single moment during a run where your head and hands aren't busy. Though it is pretty intense, even more than 20 years later. I frequently found myself leaning way too closely to my screen, which was oddly nostalgic, as it's something I would often do as a kid. After jumping, you can perform tricks by holding any of the shoulder buttons, L1, L2, R1, R2, and any combination of those will perform different tricks. Combine that with your spins and flips, and you have a ton of different options at your disposal. Tricks are necessary not just in show-off events, but races too, as they grant you boost. Boost, as the name implies, is simply a speed boost. It's pretty limiting as a concept in SSX, but it is enough to give the gameplay depth, as it pairs perfectly with the trick system and racing events. Not only are you racing, but you're doing it stylishly, which in turn is feeding your speed. This harmony is perfect because all the mechanics are building on one another, interacting in interesting ways. There's no better feeling than flying into the air, pulling off a few tricks while spinning and flipping, landing, and then hearing the record scratch while your boost gauge fills up. The game also runs at a beautiful 60 FPS, which helps give it a big sense of speed. The graphics are nice, but it does suffer from being a launch title. Thankfully, the art direction and level design both help out immensely. The models are only slightly exaggerated, so it doesn't feel too cartoony or too realistic. The tracks are colorful, and many of the jumps, embankments, and grindable rails are clearly marked with colors that contrast really good against the white snow. We'd see EA use this type of level design again, famously in Mirror's Edge. Speed boosting also gives you a colored trail behind your character, and the sound effects aid in this. I'd be remiss not to bring up the music and sound, which gives this game so much life. It has a fantastic soundtrack of both licensed and original music, consisting of rock, funk, and hip-hop, but it's really how it's incorporated into the gameplay. The music becomes muffled while airborne and raises in intensity after completing big tricks. It gives the gameplay a pulse, and rewards you with sweet dopamine when playing well. It's like a cycle, where doing good feels good, and feeling good makes you play good. When you're nailing every jump and turn, it's the best feeling. But when you're smashing yourself against every wall, it makes you want to smash your own head into a wall. And I loved every minute of it. The sound too needs a huge shout out. Racking up points? There's a sound effect. Land a trick successfully? There's a sound effect. Boosting, grinding a rail, grabbing a speed boost power-up, flipping your border, everything has an accompanying sound effect that's distinct, so you know exactly what's happening, and it also never clashes with the other sounds or the game's music. If you've played more than 2 hours of SSX, chances are you can simply listen to a run and understand what's happening based solely on the sounds and music. It, of course, also makes everything you do that much more impactful. As I mentioned earlier, all the tracks vary dramatically from one another. Although most levels don't explicitly state their location, it's quite clear where the influences have been drawn from. Mercury City Meltdown is reminiscent of New York City, while Mesa Blanca is clearly based on the Black Mesa State Park. Although I'm not a fan of Elysium Alps as it's chock full of ice, which makes you go faster at the cost of control, and it has deep snow, which does the opposite. It also doesn't really have many jumps. It's the only track that doesn't do much to engage the player.
I'm here for the PlayStation 2, the best entertainment system to hit the world. It's gonna be great.
It should come as no surprise that EA was exceptionally pleased with Steven's game. It helped make the PlayStation 2 to be the must-own console during its launch. SSX had both great reviews and strong sales, so a sequel was quickly greenlit. Steven and his team ushered the extreme sports genre into a new, exciting age, and at the helm was EA Big, the marketing arm that promised bigger and better arcade sports games. Although things seemed great for the time being, with SSX's landmark release, things quickly became bumpy for both Steven and EA. More games began to release under the EA Big banner by outside development teams that Steven had no part in. The games were alright, but they weren't really up to EA's new standard, a standard Steven and SSX created. He had to prove himself again. Thankfully, he already had a new idea in mind.